Now I'll share my screen for you, Henry.
Great, thank you. Well, thank you, Commissioner, and thank you, Juliet. Good afternoon and welcome, everyone. My name is Henry Piankos. I'm currently assigned to oh, hang on a minute, my notes just left. There we go. Sorry about that. I had the Zoom just went large on me. Okay, so again, I'm currently assigned to Department's modernization project as the tax division lead, as previously the supervisor of the employer tax accounting unit. So I know of the challenges you and your clients have experienced over the years with our old system, and I definitely empathize with you. I can assure you the new system will streamline quite a bit and make things easier both for the TPAs on this call and for our staff. You may be familiar with the names of Steve Boucher and Kalea Wilson. Steve is my successor as a supervisor of employer tax accounting, and he's our current expert on the bulk filing and working with the TPAs, and Kalea is his right-hand woman who helps him out with that. So that's kind of the area where I came from. So again, I do have good understanding of the challenges you folks have faced. All right, well, I'm ready for slide 1, please. So basically, the Connecticut Department of Labor, we've been working very hard to launch the ReEmploy CT system. It's the state's new system that will be used by 3 different divisions: the tax, the benefits, and the appeals division. Many of you know how long we've been working on this, and the commissioner just pretty much gave you an update on that and recapped how long we've been at this. And again, that pandemic recently threw us another curveball, but basically we're ready to go live on July 5th. ReEmploy CT, it changes a lot about how we'll be doing business. It'll be changing how we do things for unemployment filers, for employers, and their third-party agents, who I'll be referring to you folks as TPAs pretty much for the rest of this presentation. We're here today to give you an overview of those changes and to help you prepare also. When July 5th arrives, you'll have seen advanced copies of the new screens. You should be able to, and hopefully you'll be able to transition to those without too much pain. Ultimately, I think it's a great system that's going to bring us online and just improve upon the old 1970s COBOL system that's being held together right now by duct tape and clothespins. But it is a change, so we're here to answer your questions and to help clarify any issues, hopefully before they even come up. We'll hold another session in late June and round up any last minute questions at that point. We'll also continue to push out information and resources on our website and notify you of those of you who sign up for our email updates. We'll notify you via those updates. Once we get past July 5th, you'll still be able to get in touch with us by email, by phone, and we'll continue to update the FAQs on our webpage with information as it's needed. Will, all set with slide 2, ready to go, please. So any entity that files and/or pays unemployment taxes on behalf of another employer should register in the new ReEmploy system in July as a TPA. This can include local, regional, and national payroll agencies, CPAs and/or bookkeepers, as well as corporate payroll departments filing for subsidiaries. By registering as a TPA, you can work on any employer linked to your TPA credentials, and I'll speak more about that as we go along. And importantly, you do not need to be linked to any employer or client account in order to file and pay unemployment taxes on behalf of an employer who's your client. You will be able to file and pay on their behalf pretty much immediately after registering. And Will, if you can go to slide 3, please. So this slide is kind of a table of contents is how I look at it. These 5 topics I'll be covering in the following slides, and I'll just briefly go over these 5 now. And some of these topics you'll hear me discuss several times. We really, the ones that are really important, you might get sick of hearing me talk about some of them, but I'd rather make sure you catch it at least one time, then worry about hearing it too many times. So TPAs will need new credentials. You'll need to create a new user ID, a new password. This is very straightforward. It only takes a few minutes. July 5th is the first time you'll be able to do this, but you'll have plenty of time between July 5th and the first due date that's going to come up will be July. Obviously, it's July 31st for the second quarter filings. Your federal identification number, or FEIN, that's kind of the key as to setting up the TPA account. That's what is really identifying you as an individual TPA, keeping you separate from others. And we'll be having sneak peeks of those screens coming soon. We're still kind of, the functionality is there, it's been tested, but we're kind of cosmetically cleaning it up and putting Connecticut's kind of flavor to it. There's also a new tax and wage bulk file format. We've published that for several weeks now, maybe even over a month or so. One thing I'd like to bring your attention to is in the new system, the 7-digit employer registration number that you're used to now using and providing for us, that's going to 10 digits, and the system refers to it as an employer account number instead of a registration number. One minor little discrepancy there, and we are going to 10 digits for the employers who are registered currently and before July 5th in the old system. All you're going to do is put on 3 trailing zeros to that current 7-digit number. And then anybody registering for the first time in the system will get their own 10-digit number, and that's all they'll be accustomed to. So just want to point that out. The new ACH credit format, there is going to be some changes to that because the system is totally different. There'll be a little bit of a change to how you can proceed with an ACH debit payment within the system. There's no file format that you need to worry about for ACH debit. We have published a new ACH credit file, and hopefully testing will start on that soon. I'm going to be meeting with our vendor and our bank. It happens to be Bank of America, who is our the receiving depository financial institution, if you're familiar with the ACH credit process. So I'll be meeting with those 2 entities soon and trying to come up with a test plan, especially for those new TPAs who handle reimbursable employers. This will be the first time we accept electronic payments from reimbursable employers or their agents. So I'm really pushing to get some kind of a test there for those first timers. ReEmploy Connecticut, it's all digital. It's all electronic. We're cutting way back on paper. Therefore, the correction return forms that are currently being filed, those will no longer be accepted. We've been weaning off of those for years anyways. The legislation passed, I believe, back in 2014 that changed that and required all electronic filings. There will be 3 different methods for updating tax and wage reports electronically, and I'll get into those and discuss those more down the road. And finally, TPAs, we encourage you to use the rate exchange process that it exists now. It'll continue to exist in the future. It's not only a rate exchange process, it's also a way to check and see that the registration number that you're using or the employer account number you'll use is actually an accurate number and valid within our system. Basically, it does a couple things, and we'll be sharing the form that can be used for that. But we definitely encourage you to use that process. That batch job runs every day at 3:30. You can take advantage of it as often as you like and assure that you're using the right numbers, even if your clients are giving you the wrong ones. And let's see, Will, I guess we're good, ready to go to slide 4, please. Okay, so TPAs, employers, and unemployment filers, again, you need new usernames and passwords in the reemployment CT system. The username kind of wide open, not many qualifiers there as far as what you can use. The password is fairly typical from what I'm sure you've seen in your personal lives and in your own businesses. It's a 8-character minimum with 1 capital letter required, 1 lowercase letter required, one number required and 2 special characters. We received a good question in yesterday's town hall. It had to do with the resets of the username and passwords, and oddly enough, that has not come up in our testing. So I've reached out to our vendor, and we'll be getting an answer to that as far as how often, if there are resets at all, and how often. My guess is the username will not have any type of reset, but from, again, personal experiences, seems like password resets are commonplace. But again, we'll get that answered for you hopefully soon. The TPA's Federal Employer Identification Number, the FEAN, that is the key data element when you're getting your credentials. There's only one set of credentials for each FEIN. For those of you TPAs who also happen to be Connecticut employers and file tax reports of your own, the FEIN rather for the TPAs, that's on a separate table than the FEIN for the employers, for the liable employers. So there's no issue there. You'll be able to file as an individual employer if that's how you so choose, or you could put your own employee tax and wage report into the bulk file that you're submitting as a TPA. So there's no problem there. Again, credentials may be established on July 5th or later, and that, again, within plenty of time in that first quarterly due date. Once credentials are established, TPAs will be able to upload those tax and wage reports immediately. So let's say you go in on July 5th, and maybe you've got a new client who just signed up with you, and they are liable back to 2021 or the first quarter of 22. You'll be able to file for them as quickly as that same day on July 5th, once you get those credentials established after about a couple of minutes of entering some information for us. All right, Will, I'm ready to go on to slide 5, please. Okay, so once you're registered in July, here's some changes and enhancements that you'll see for tax and wage report filing. First of all, you're no longer going to be FTPing these files, and where they'll just sit on in the old way or the current way, they sit on a server until the folks I mentioned earlier go out and pick them up and use a separate application to process them. Instead, it'll be a simple upload process, which means you can click and paste it from your browser or drag it from your browser and drop it into the ReEmploy system. And since it's an upload, you're not sending any FTPing any files, there will be no need for any kind of a naming convention for these files. For example, right now, the naming convention requires you to use your 7-digit agent ID number or holding account number. Begins 99-99 and then 3 digits after for most of you. Also, in our naming convention, we require the quarter year that the file represents. So none of that will be required. However, it's probably a good idea, for your own business purposes, to use one of your own naming conventions to keep track of your files, but we're not going to require it. The file format is a new ISSA format. It only contains 1 T record for each of your employers, your clients, and 1 S record for each employee of those employers. When I was doing research on the ISSA format, I found out that goes way back to the 70s and 80s during the mag media days of cartridges and magnetic tape and whatnot. And it wasn't a lot of there wasn't a lot of specific requirements in it. It seemed to me like the ISSA format, all it was 276 characters, and depending on the different entities using it or the different states, the actual field sizes within were all over the place. So basically, if you're familiar with ISSA, that's what we're using. We're getting away from the EF and S records that are used in other ISSA formats, and this one would be the simple T and S's. Once a TPA signs on and tells the system who you are, there's no identifier there needed. The fact that you've signed on, that's telling us who you are. So within the new file format, we don't need your FEIN in the file format and the T or the S record. And we definitely are not using that 7-digit 99-99 number any longer in the new system either. Again, previously registered employers from the old system, their 7-digit employer registration number will be converted to a 10-digit number. I want to emphasize that again. And this conversion is very simple. It's adding 3 trailing zeros to that old number for your existing clients. So that'll be how you need to populate those records at that point. I want to mention something for ACH debit payers. I know most of you might be ACH credit payers, but for those who pay via ACH credit, in the file, in the T record, there's a field called the remittance authorization amount, where you'll be telling us how much you're authorizing us to take an ACH debit payment for. So what I want to explain about this, let's say you have 10 clients and you're paying $100 for each of them. So we're expecting to take $1,000 out of your account. If for some reason 2 of those records do not post because there's a bad registration number or something, we won't take the 1,000, we'll only take the 800. So there's not going to be any holding account or any place where, like that for the money to go. For the ACH debit process, we're just going to take what we know we can post. So you basically, whatever the summation is of all those fields, that's a maximum authorized amount we take out of your checking account, but it may be lower. Also, during this upload process, there's no processing of the individual records. It's only an upload. The file is going to sit on a server until an overnight batch process runs. So at this point, you're only going to get errors which are at a file level error level, basically a formatting type of an error. So that'll be it during the time of the actual upload. Okay, well, I'm all set for slide 6, please. Okay, so as I mentioned, once that file is uploaded, there's an overnight batch process that's going to run and basically process that file. This is where record level errors will be detected. So if you give us a bad registration number that does not exist on our system, or if you give us a number that does exist, but they're discontinued, they told us they went out of business and they're back in business and haven't properly reopened their account or established a new number, those things will kind of kick out. If some of the arithmetic level errors might be there, if the tax report, the gross wages minus excess wages doesn't equal the total of the taxable wages, that'll be a record level error. So those types of errors will kick out here. Once that file gets processed during the overnight batch process, the TPA should visit the system the next day and check out how successful that record or that file and the records were in getting posted. It's at this time that you'll get a report that shows the records that have processed successfully. And you also get a reject report showing you the ones that have not posted and the reject reason. Again, please use that rate exchange tool that I mentioned earlier to really eliminate or substantially reduce these rejects. You could use them, you could do it every day basically. And I definitely encourage you to do it several times before the file submission before the quarterly due dates. Also, as I get into it down the road and describe the ACH process, that's separate from this. So if you have a bad registration number in the tax report, you're going to have a bad registration number in the ACH credit file also. I encourage you to send the tax and wage report files early because for the rejects, you'll have to research those yourselves and submit those corrected records on a separate upload in, after the original one. So again, this is just the tax wage report. It's not the payment. So if you're capable of sending something in July 15th and uploading a file and seeing what kicks out, and then kind of triage those over the next week or two and send in another 1 or 2 or 3 files. For example, if you sent in 100 records and 10 kicked out, and you resolve 3 tomorrow, you could send me another file with those 3. And if the other 7, it took you 2 weeks, you could send that in. And so I definitely encourage you to send in the tax wage report files as early as possible. And it doesn't need to be all your clients all at once. If you want to adopt a policy where you're sending them as they're ready, feel free to do that. Another factor is that only original tax and wage reports can be sent through this method. If you have amendments or corrections, you cannot use this upload process to do that, but I will speak to the other 3 methods in an upcoming slide. Okay, Will, I'm ready for slide 7, please. Okay, so I mentioned a couple of the different electronic payment methods and want to give you a little more information on the ACH credit process. If you're paying via ACH credit, there are some changes within the file format. The ACH credit format, that's the NACHA format, National Automated Clearinghouse Association. That's unlike the ISESO, the ISESO format, this NACHA format, those data field links and the types of data that can go in there, that's not ours, that's carved in stone. There's no changing that by state agencies or banks or payees or payors. So when I say changes, basically it's just changes to some of the data within there. For example, the 7-digit number, registration number, or EAN going to 10-digit, no longer using your 7-digit agent number starting 99, instead using your FEIN. So those are some of the things I'm talking about. Again, this ACH credit file process is in no way linked to the tax and wage report method. So again, if you put in a wrong EAN here or one that's not valid because they're no longer liable, again, you're going to have to fix it here in the ACH credit process and also for that tax or wage report. We have not changed banks, so all the banking information, which I believe resides in something like the 1, maybe the 5, and maybe the 8 record. I'm learning a little bit about ACH credit as we go here. So that's not changing. Again, you're no longer using the 7-digit agent number, and which in the current system, you'd be putting that in field 7 of the 5 record. And what you'll be doing now, instead of the 99 number, you'll be putting the 10-digit FEIN in there. And for your clients EAN, you'll be going from, again, that 7-digit employer reg number in our current system to the 10-digit with the 3 trailing zeros that'll go into field 7 of the 6 record. Again, once these files are submitted, the TPA will need to use their credentials to see how the ACH credit file had processed. And anything that will have posted successfully will be shown to you. And you'll also be shown reject records where we could not post the payment that you had submitted. So again, use that rate exchange process. And I did mention that I'm meeting with the vendor soon and the bank, and we're going to see if we can come up with a test plan for this ACH credit, especially for those new reimbursable employer payments. So July 5th sounds kind of soon, but the payments aren't due until July 31st. So, we've got another 25, 26 days there to work things out. Let's see, what did I else want to mention that? Oh, that was it for the ACH credit. Okay, so for ACH debit, that's where you're giving us your bank account and routing number, and we're drawing the money from your bank. The banking industry calls it putting and taking. So here we're going out and taking it as opposed to you putting it in our account. So there's no actual file format here. You're doing things in our system. Basically, I just want to reiterate that what we're going to do is sum up the remittance amount. The remittance authorization amount is the name of that field in that T record. So again, the example I gave earlier, if you give us 10 clients at $100 each and 2 of them kick out because of a wrong number, we're only going to pull the 800. So I just want to mention that again here. Okay, I'm ready for slide 8, please, Will. Okay, so after July 5th, again, we're going to be fully digital, and we'll no longer be processing hard copies of corrections. I've mentioned that. We've been trying to really wind that down for years now anyways. Again, the statute went into effect in 2014, and we kind of tried starting to enforce it early in 2018. And just because of staffing levels and complexities for working all these paper returns. So basically, per statute, employers are required to comply with the filing requirements by the due date. So if you're one of these TPAs who finds themselves sending in a lot of corrections, I'd encourage you to take a look at what's causing that. Is it at the client level that's a problem, or is it a business process of yours that might require some looking into? Basically, the very shortest turnaround time before the last payroll date would be the first quarter. The last payroll date would be possibly March 31st. We were giving you 30 days until April 30th for the due date. So, that last payroll is done. Take a look at why so many corrections are required when you've got 30 days to get the original one in and sent in correctly. Another example is if a payroll period ends on December 18th, that's another 13 days until the end of the quarter. And if it's on a weekend, you've got another couple days. So in some cases, you've got 45, 46, 47 days to get the right information into us. So again, if you are one of those TPAs who's finding yourselves doing a lot of corrections, please check out why and try to eliminate those. Again, use that rate exchange process and which also validates the registration numbers or the EANs. Corrections or amendments that do need to be done, I understand they'll still happen, but when they do need to be done, there are three methods to do it. The employer, your client themselves, they can go in and into our system and make those corrections themselves. They can go in just as you could on July 5th or after and establish their own credentials and gain access to our system. They'll also be able to give us other information at this time. For example, there's 4 different addresses that the new system provides for. Right now, we only have one address of record in our system. The 4 new ones will be for tax documentation, tax correspondence outgoing, for claimant type correspondence that's going out, an address for your tax records in case there's a need to contact someone, an accountant, or you're somebody who represents your clients as far as audits are concerned. And then the physical address of the Connecticut business will be the 4th address that they can give us information to. Another thing the employers will be able to do is set up what is kind of called sub-users. When the employers go in, whoever's setting up credentials for the first time, those credentials are going to kind of be the master credentials for that employer. And using those master credentials, they can then give rights to sub-users and either give the sub-users all the rights that the master user has or gives just certain rights to them. But if they chose to, they could give a TPA some sub-user rights, and the TPA could use those to go in and make corrections. That's kind of what I just went over, kind of jumped down to that 3rd sub bullet where we're talking about this, where I talked about the sub users. The middle one, the middle sub bullet there, that's more likely what a TPA would or could do if there was a correction needing to be done. The TPA can be linked to their clients and they could access their clients' accounts online themselves. And the way the linking process happens is or the way it did happen until we got a change for Connecticut and for you folks. In the way it originally was set up was the employer would have to send in a form asking to be linked to their TPA, and then we would get that form and do it manually. Now we realize in Connecticut, we've got some TPAs who have tens of, one of our largest has over 10,000 clients, and that just wouldn't have made any sense. Plus we have memorandums of understanding or powers of attorneys with you folks, and the way we worked it out is kind of a blanket POA where the power of attorney kind of says if you're filing on behalf of someone, you're certifying that you're legally allowed to do so. I haven't seen one of those in a couple of years. Don't quote that exact verbiage on the form, but that's kind of the gist of it. So we're not going to do this requirement of having each employer send in a form. We're going to do a kind of a behind the scenes database table linking for you. It will require you to send us a list of your clients, and we'll be publishing that form shortly. It may even be out there now. basically, I think it has 4 columns. It has the employer account number, that 10-digit EAN is what you need to provide us, the employer's, your client's FEIN, the name, and I forget what the 4th one was, but again, we'll get that out to you. But we'll use that to make sure we are dealing with valid registration numbers. We'll do the same kind of comparison the rate exchange does. We'll make sure the EANs and FEINs match. And if they do, we'll link those behind the scenes on the database table. So you'll be able to access your client's accounts. We won't be able to do that till July 5th. That's as soon as we can do it. But again, shouldn't be a big deal because the first due date's not till July 31st. So once you get your credentials at that point, once we have those lists, we'll be able to do the process then. As far as getting the linking done. So if you want to start working on those lists, fine, but the sooner you're sending them in, the more likely you might have some changes. So, and I'm not concerned about getting these in the early stages of July. So that's it for that. Will, let's go on to slide 9, please. Okay. So this, I promise you, is the last time I'm going to address this topic. You might be sick of hearing me say it, but again, please, it's imperative that you folks utilize our agency's rate exchange process. It'll ensure that you have the correct reporting information for your clients. Again, that process, it verifies the correct rate for your clients. So if they're giving you last year's rate and it's lower, last year's was lower than now, they're not going to be getting penalty and interest assigned to them. That's especially important that first quarter when rates change. And on the other side of the coin, if their old rate is higher than the current rate, you're not collecting too much and creating credits, which we're then going to have to refund every quarter, causing more issues. And then employers have lost checks and stolen checks and whatnot. So that just causes problems for both your clients and us. And also, most importantly, perhaps, is that rate exchange process is kind of, maybe that's a bad name for it, because it's also validating that that employer account number is valid. So it's doing both things. Okay, well, slide 10, please. All right, so this is the last slide of our ongoing communication efforts, and those communication efforts do include this email contact that we have here. Please feel free to send in any questions to this email address. We also have and that email address is the CTDOL taxinfo@ct.gov. Also, we have the following website resources available. The ReEmploy CT website at ctdol.state.ct.us. We've got frequently asked questions there that are constantly being updated. As I mentioned, there's a question or two from yesterday that we did not have, and we're going to be posting the question and answers to those very soon there. Please sign up for the ReEmploy CT email updates that Juliet had mentioned earlier. And once you give us your email information, keep an eye on emails for our June webinar. We'll be getting information and more specifics out on that. We urge both TPAs and employers to sign up for all of these things. We won't use this list for, as Juliet mentioned, we're not going to use the list for anything else other than kind of ReEmploy CT education. And we want to make sure we can notify you of website updates and screenshot sneak peeks, things of that nature, as soon as possible. So this concludes my portion of the PowerPoint presentation. I'll now kick it back to Juliet.
Oh, that seems pretty straightforward there, right? We might have some questions here. So Michaela, do you want to let us know if there's anybody in the chat that has any questions? You can either raise your hand or we can pull them from the chat, whatever's easiest for folks on the call.
Yeah, so we do have 2 questions in the chat. So we'll start with Carol, who wants to know, how do we access the rate exchange?
Okay, I'm not too technically savvy. I know there's a JScape server involved. It's very similar and kind of mirrors what we're doing now. So if you're accustomed to the current process, right now, I believe, at a layman's term level, you're sending us a file which sits on our JScape server. We have a job that happens, I believe it's 3:30 now, and it's going to continue to be at 3:30 each day, where an application processes that file and then posts the two different files I mentioned, the file with the correct reg numbers and the corresponding rates on one file, and the reject file is another one that's posted on that JScape server, where I believe you go and pick it up at whatever time you decide to do so. Again, more detailed information will be following on that. And unfortunately, like I said, I'm not that technically savvy on that part, but we'll get that information out soon.
All right, great. Thank you, Henry. We're going to move on to the next question, which is from Cassie, and she wants to know, will the rate exchange still utilize the existing process, or will that move to the new system as well?
Yeah, so it's my understanding that it's kind of outside the system as far as what you're saying, but the new system will be the one that is processing that file at 3:30 and then posting the two response files on the JScape server. So from what I've heard from your perspective, it should pretty much be seamless, I think. Perhaps, again, at a layman's level, I'm not sure if the address of that JScape server needs to change because of our new system, but that will be something we will resolve soon for you.
All right, great. Thank you. So the next question is kind of a multi-part question, so we're going to break it up. The first part is, will registration be all online? Will there be letters sent to physical addresses to complete the registration?
Okay, so yes, registration will be all online. Back in 2014, the legislation then also required registrations to become electronic. And that legislation is still out there. So yes, it will be all online. Basically, there may be some exceptions or waiver request at that point, but that legislation does require it to be electronic, and it does it not only does it provide for some penalties for non-electronic registration, it also provides for penalties for late registration, and those I believe they're each $50, and we'll be with the new system we'll be assessing those as applicable. And I'm sorry, Michaela, what was the second part, please?
Yeah, so it's 5 parts. The second part is there a file size limitation for the wage or payment file?
No, there's not.
Okay, great. Can we get a list of errors we can expect for wage file upload beforehand, or is that published on the site now?
Mike, can you step in here? Did we get those over to you yet, the UIM team? And do you know if they've been published, or is that not out there yet?
It is not out there yet. So
Okay.
as soon as we get them, we will publish them.
Okay, great. And how many files per day can we upload?
Officially, there's no limit there. They wouldn't need to be named, or I'm sorry, when you're uploading, no, they won't need to be named separately. When you're uploading, we're going to name that file and give you a confirmation number. If during that same day before the overnight batch process, if you need to replace that file, there is an option to either, when you're doing the upload, you'll be able to indicate whether you're uploading a new file or replacing an existing one. And again, the replacing the existing just means the same day. If you come in tomorrow, that file would have got processed, so you're not replacing that file.
Okay, great. And last question in this one is, if a TPA accidentally files for a former client, what will happen to the current provider's file when they attempt to upload? Will it be rejected, or will it override the previously submitted return? If it gets rejected for this reason, will the current provider still be able to submit payment for that client?
Okay, so a couple different things there. This bulk upload process is just for the original report. So kind of the simple answer is whoever gets there first. So if the TPA who is no longer who no longer has a contract with that client. Let's say the client broke off, February 15th from TPA 1, and TPA 1 files the first 6 or 7 weeks payroll records as a taxable wage report. And if they do that first, that's what's on the system. So now if TPA number 2 comes in, who's hired on February 16th, files the full quarter's tax report or even the partial one, it will kick out as a reject reason of, original report already filed or something like that. To get it fixed, the second TPA would need to go in using one of those 2 methods that I mentioned, either by being linked or just going in as a TPA, and they can upload the wage report, but then they so if it's a client who has 1,000 employees, you're not going to have to type in all 1,000. You can upload the wage report as a TPA doing a correction, but then you'll have to go in and take care of the tax report, which is basically just the 3 amounts: the total gross wages, confirming those, the excess wages, and the taxable wages.
Okay, great. We're going to move on to a question from Natalia, which is, do we still need to submit the 0 returns separately?
I'm sorry, Michaela, you know what? I just remembered, I think I missed a question about the payment from the prior question. There's another part about the payment. Yeah, the payments, those will come in and post regardless of whether, in the scenario I gave with TPA 1 and 2, if both sent in money, they would both post. And if the first one sent in a partial return and the other sent in a total return, then the first payment would likely be a credit amount. So we would accept the multiple payments, but not the multiple tax reports. Sorry, Michaela.
No problem. I'll reweed. I can't get the word out. The next question. Do we still need to submit the 0 returns separately?
No, that's no longer required. That's from the old days when our staff was processing the corrections and the errors and the rejects, and we needed to work on the money first, the tax report first, and so any tax reports with money were a priority, and then tax reports that didn't have money but had wages were the second priority, and then the tax reports that were just 0 wage reports were our last priority. So that's not required any longer.
Okay, great. Question from Sandy is, would this site also be used for the submission of POAs going forward, as well as claims correspondence, or is this only for processing of quarterly returns?
Okay, for the POA part, to become a linked TPA, those POAs would be used for this, and it's not through the system. Let's say you don't have one with us now, a POA, and your new TPA. Once you sent us that file requesting to get linked to these employers and get access to their accounts, that's when we'd set up the POA with you. For those who exist already, we'll look in our files, make sure we have a valid one, a current one, and just link you folks with them without requiring a new one. And I'm sorry, what was the second part of that, Michaela? Oh, the claims part of it. Yes, this town hall is just for TPAs on the tax side. We had a similar question yesterday regarding TPAs who handle claim information. That's handled by our benefits side. They have not done a town hall yet. I believe there's some discussions in the works for something like that. And again, I'm not an expert on this. I know very little about it, but there's this acronym SIDES where those claimant TPAs can access or provide information for claimant I believe for claim issues.
Okay, great. And next question is, depending on the payroll software you use, it should create a file for you based on being a CT business, and then you upload it to the state. The new rates can then be downloaded the next day and imported back into your software. Before we import it, we check it against our master CT list to ensure no one's rate is missed. I guess the question there is if that is the case or just sharing information. So any comment, Henry?
Yeah, I'm not getting the question there.
Yeah,
Should we-
okay. I think they're just sharing information in the chat. So we'll go ahead and move on to Jim's question. If a client has an incorrect federal ID within the CTDOL system, is there a new way for the client to get that corrected, or do they still need to fax paperwork in and wait until it is updated? Sometimes clients have to send this 3 or 4 times before someone actually updates it.
Okay, yeah, that will be self-service. The client will be able to go in and get those credentials on July 5th and check all, basically, they're gonna have access to a lot more information than they do now. They'll be able to look at all the demographic information, addresses, owners, officers, the FEIN included, their NAICS code, you name it. So there will be a lot more information available to them and a lot more self-service features they can take care of themselves.
Okay, great. Next question is the state doing any beta testing with a real TPA company?
There's nothing formal planned right now. We are kind of talking amongst ourselves about having some TPAs send us some files via email that we could run through our current test environment. And again, more information on both the tax and wage report testing and the ACH credit file testing will be coming up in the near future. But yeah, I personally would like to have something like that. There is no kind of a soft rollout planned. There are concerns at many levels about opening up the production site prior to going live and having, hacking issues and whatnot. So there's not going to be anything like that. There is some talk about maybe doing something July 3rd, July 4th with kind of a friends and family thing. I think that's mainly on the benefits level as far as getting claimants to file and be sure they're getting paid properly. But we might also explore something like that for maybe some of the TPAs who we're in contact with.
Okay, great. And the second,
Michaela, if I could just
Sure.
clarify and add to what Henry said. Excuse me, I just want folks to know that even though we have yet to allow any public access into the test environment, we are doing test environment with our experts and developers. So I just want to make that clear.
okay, great. Thank you both. And we're going to move on to the second part of that same question, which is, are we working with the major payroll software vendors to ensure that they are up to date with the new functionality?
Yes, we have been in contact with those folks. Yes.
Okay, great. We're going to move on to a question from Eric, which is, can we talk a little bit more about uploading a file to the employers? Will we upload that after July 5th? They didn't see the file format online yet.
So, okay, so I think what you're asking is that that wage report upload, is that what they're asking about for an individual employer?
Eric, if you want to specify in the chat a little bit more on your question, I'll go ahead and read that out. But in the meantime, we'll come back to you. So we're going to move on to Keith, and then we'll go right back to Eric's question, which is, when we are linked, will prior year information be available for our clients?
Yes, both your clients, once they establish their credentials, and the TPAs who are linked to them will be able to see all the migrated data and up-to-date information, both, the tax and wage, and basically anything on the tax and wage reports will be viewable. Yes.
Okay, great. And Eric specified the previous question, which is that he's asking about initial upload for all of our employers to link to our TPA account. And I can read the question if that helps, Henry.
Yes, please.
Okay. Can you talk a little bit more about uploading a file of all our employers? Will we upload that after July 5th? And then adding on to that is that they are asking about the initial upload for the employers that link to the TPA accounts.
Oh, okay. I'm perhaps I misspoke. I'm not sure. The file, the information I mentioned, it's going to be on an Excel spreadsheet, actually, the list of TPA clients who you want to get linked to. That will be an Excel spreadsheet with the 4 columns I mentioned, the reg number, the FEIN, the name, and perhaps the rate. I forget what the fourth one was, but yes, that will be done through mail. That won't email rather. That won't be an upload. You'll send that to us at probably to an individual to be determined in the future as we get closer to July 5th, and we'll check the memorandum of understanding or power of attorney, make sure it's on file and current, and then we'll use the system to compare the records in that file, and we'll do the upload from there. So yeah, if I gave you the impression that you need to upload that file, that's not how it happened. It's actually an Excel spreadsheet.
Okay, great.
So, Michaela, can I just clarify?
Yep.
Henry, so an employer does not have to be linked, a TPA does not have to be linked to an employer to file the tax and wage return, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Once the TPA gets their credentials and goes online, they can upload their tax and wage report right away without the linking.
Okay.
Right, great. And we're going to move on to our final question here in the chat. If anyone has any more questions, you can drop it. But this is our last one. It is ACH credit payment file record 5 field 4 states must enter TPA. What would a regular employer filing on their own behalf enter in this field?
Okay. There was a version that I saw where it was EMP, but if it's just one employer with one payment, then it pretty much is irrelevant.
Okay. And I just scanned, I don't see any hands raised, but if you do have a more complex question, please feel free to raise your hand now and I will go ahead and unmute you and you can jump on in and ask it. So I'll just do a quick check.
There's also one more in the chat, Michaela, if you.
Okay. All right, we have a new question from Stephen. We'll go ahead and read that in the meantime. Since the rate of exchange is so important, can you please provide a URL to for the documentation on it? A quick Google search of site ct.gov and site ctdol.state.ct.us does not turn anything up.
Okay, sure. That's definitely something we could look into. That would be something other than what my group would handle, but we'll definitely look into that and making information on the rate exchange more readily available.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Thanks, Michaela. Thank you, Henry. Are there any other questions? If so, just raise your hand. Otherwise, you can feel free to go ahead and send a follow-up email to us, and we will send out information that is responsive to the questions that we couldn't answer right now. So we have a running list of that. You'll see those updated in the FAQs. For some of the questions related to the sides component, that is in the works, as Henry said, and so that will come down the pipeline shortly as well. Anybody else? Are there any hands up? I don't see anything. All right, well, I think that we are in good shape then. Oops, one just came in. Oh, okay, not a question, good. All right, fantastic. So we hope that this really was good for people to kind of get their feet wet on this issue. We will have a June roundup. So as more information comes out, we'll give you kind of another opportunity to contact directly with the experts on this, ask any remaining follow-up questions so that you can be ready to do the credentialing on July 5th. Henry, do you have any closing remarks, or Mike, do you have any closing remarks?
I think I'm all set. Thank you, Julia.
Okay, Mike? Oh, Mike is muted. Okay.
I just want to thank you all for attending and I hope this was helpful. And again, just to reiterate, Juliet, if you have any questions, feel free to send it to the web address that's on the screen there, email address, excuse me, and we'll get back to you as soon as we can.
Great. Thank you so much, everybody. We will hopefully see you in June. Take care.
Thank you all for attending. Take care, folks.